Hello. Let's see. All right, so I'm just sitting here right now. Let's see. I don't know why I'm doing a middle of the day stream because I just woke up, to be honest with you, and I have an appointment in a couple hours, so I thought I'd kill a few hours, see if anybody wanted to come on and discuss writing or whatever. I do realize it's an old day, so I'm sure I'm not going to get that many people. But so I guess let's just go over some of the stuff that I've put out lately. And then you guys who are watching this on the replay can make comments or whatever. But I've got, let me go to the playlists. So Night Terror in my horror playlist. I'm gonna let's talk about my kind of Halloween project I'm doing here. So there's two stories in this playlist that are not a part of the novel that I'm working on, and it turns out the way I've got it plotted out is probably going to be 3 novels, and I have the first one, the rough draft, done. However, that being said, I've got a lot of background work to do before I do a second edit on the draft. So that's the purpose of a lot of these stories. So the two that aren't included are Night Terror, which is basically a paranoia story that turns out to be the paranoia was completely justified. And then A Thief's Tale, which is actually a kind of Frankenstein story set in a fantasy universe. So, and I do know A Thief's Tale is really long, but if you're on a car drive or something, I hope it's okay. I also realize that I am not a voice actor, so me reading these stories is a little iffy at best. But let's start off with The Boy. The Boy was the first of these novels because I'm trying to set down the rules for werewolves and such. So the rules for werewolves in this thing is going to be only men can transform and be wolves, but they have to breed with specific females that have a genetic trait, and they can sense that trait either through smell or a supernatural ability. I haven't really locked that down yet. So werewolves are most commonly known for kidnapping women and raping them. They are evil. They are bad guys. They were created by vampires using vampire manipulation of vampire blood, and it created a disease called lycanthropy. And women who become pregnant with a werewolf child do not survive the birth. So, in this series of novels, there are no good monsters. There's no such thing. Monsters are monsters for a reason. So wolves are crazy, aggressive, hyper-violent creatures, and they despise humanity. So the boy kind of goes through a little quick sequence of an encounter with wolves. And then I did cosplay. That's my vampire story. So vampires in this, they don't just, everybody thinks that they feed on blood, but they don't. They start with blood, and they can certainly sustain themselves with blood. but they feed on the essence of a human, right? They can't live off animals. They have to have a soul to feed on. And if they truly feed a person to death, then everything's gone. Their bones, their everything. So that's really what it's set up to do. Kind of weird here, but okay. And they use a glamour, so they're not how they appear. They're like insects. They are bloated, thin-legged, look like nasty-looking spiders. But you can't see through their glamour, so they look like beautiful humans. And that's basically how they trap their victims. There's only a few master vampires in the world. According to the story, there's really only one, but you find that out later. So, master vampire, which means he's a vampire who can make other vampires. Once you kill a master vampire, all the other vampires die. But it's not that easy because they're super powerful. They have Renfields to protect them. They have all kinds of things. So, and zombies. So, I needed to kind of play around with that idea and fit it into the kind of the 21st century. Now, the house is kind of a story that ties a lot of this together. Okay. I didn't mean to click on it. It's meant to highlight it. The house is something that's meant to be kind of it's a haunted house story, but the house is actually a spell. And it's one of those kind of tie-in stories where you see glimpses of other stories that I've written in it, right? So you got pieces of cosplay in there. You've got hints at some other stories that are upcoming in it as well. And then we move on to Alice of the Green. Alice of the Green is an origin story for a witch. And these are biblical witches. These are witches that they don't commune with nature. There's no good spirits. There's no such thing as white witches. These are women or men. I have no reason to believe that a witch cannot be a male. But typically, magic manifests itself a different way in men, and they're called wizards. So, and I have a story about that as well that's coming up. One of the main characters is an actual wizard. So the house is my idea of what Hotel California, what, you know, the Overlook, the House of the Rising Sun, all these mental pictures, Amityville Horror, of a haunted house that's embedded in our psyche, because, you know, we've been afraid of old houses, you know, our entire society has for generations, castles even. So basically, this is a house that moves around. It's a spell. It's a spell designed to catch a descendant of the witch, and it ties the witch story, Alice of the Green, with the cosplay story. You get a couple of scenes out of that. But Alice of the Green is a very, very dark story, okay? It's basically a young woman was... people around this young woman was manipulated to abuse her. She hated her life. She came to understand that her beauty has become a curse because that's why she's being abused. And a kindly old lady offers her a chance at power and revenge. And knowing, so I had to ask myself, what is the ultimate evil? And when I think of ultimate evil, it's nasty, filthy evil, like maggots and rotting meat, like laying in blood for fun, like bathing in, you know, in terror. That's what a witch is, because that's what demons are. Demons are ultimate evil, ultimate destruction. They are chaos. And they bring about chaos by their agents, and witches are one of them. And Alice is going to be probably what you're going to consider the main antagonist throughout this story. And she's actually the main character's mother, that kind of thing. You know, things you'll find out later. But, and, you know, much deeper meaning. Because the series is going to be based on the predicate that Cain is the source of all monsters. Not the source of evil, but the source of all monsters. Because he was cursed to roam the world. And his curse entailed that anybody who raised a hand against the man marked with the mark of Cain would be cursed. So the person who killed Cain became a vampire. The person that killed Cain's son, Enoch, became a vampire. And then the vampires manipulated their blood and created all kinds of other creatures, namely werewolves and zombies. But there are other monsters out there that are from the old times. There is also going to be a series of fairies tales about actual fae, what we call the Sidhe, S-I-D-H-E, in the Celtic form. It's always spelled S-I-D-H-E, but it's pronounced she, because that's Celtic. Don't ask me. I couldn't learn it. I tried. But anyway, and the Sidhe are the children, the first generation children of the Nephilim, and they are immortal. But because they were the children of the Nephilim, the supposed reason for the flood, the cataclysm, the Nephilim and their children fled to a pocket dimension that was created when God created the universe. There was a backwash and it created a pocket dimension called the other side, or fairy. And the fae are primarily shapeshifters, and they have glamour. So a lot of the pantheonic gods are just other representations of the fae. For example, in the story that now the novel, the way I'm going to do this is I'm first going to post it scene by scene here on YouTube. It'll have its very own playlist, and I'm going to do scene by scene, not chapter by chapter, because that would be very long videos. So I'm going to go scene by scene, and I'm going to edit them a little bit, but I'm pretty much going to just try to get some things done. However, I work a 60 to 70 hour a week job, and it takes 2 to 3 days to do one of these videos. Alice took me 3 or 4 days, and the zombie bar mitzvah took me an extra day because I still don't like it. I think there's a lot of problems with it. It doesn't seem to flow as well. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I freely admit I am no voice actor. I stutter, I stumble, tend to edit while I'm reading, that kind of thing. So I'm hoping, if the channel ends up being successful, eventually I'll hire a voice actor and hire someone with a lot more editing skills than I have, to where I can just write and upload the videos. That's the plan, but I don't see that happening anytime soon, if ever, because I'm trying to take advantage of YouTube while it's here, and we all have access pretty much. I don't think that's going to last forever. I think they're going to break it. People are just being insane. So, so Alice of the Green is most definitely going to be the main known antagonist for these stories. Now, the zombie story I just released this morning, I clicked on it again. This is kind of a character study for my main protagonist and his partner. It even mentions Kit, who is a she who is bonded to romantically and spiritually through a ritual that was performed to the main character, the protagonist. And a kitsune, she's a nine-tailed kitsune, who's several thousand years old, and she has two forms, and one of those forms is a nine-tailed Arctic fox that can disappear at will, can teleport, and speaks directly telepathically with Jackson because they're bonded. And in the novel, you go through how that all happens. But that's something that people may not. Well, who is Kit? What is Kit? So the predicate of this story is they're just actually trying to get away, and they were going to go hunting or something, and got stuck in this hotel filled with zombies. So Jackson Octavian Kane is the 8th descendant of Cain, who was cursed to walk the earth marked not because he killed his brother and murdered his brother in rage, but because when God asked him what he did, he lied. He lied to the face of God. And therefore, he was cursed to walk the face of the earth. He couldn't die from disease. He couldn't die from most things that, infections, things like that. But if enough massive trauma was caused, he would die. The person who kills a descendant of Cain, because the curse is in the blood, always in the blood, becomes a monster. Third or fourth generation of Cain decided that the only way to stop this process, because beings were finding out and hunting the descendants of Cain down for power, was to hunt monsters and kill monsters. Well, so, we get to Jackson Cain. Jackson Cain is a unique individual who was very isolated during his childhood because he was raised from birth to fight monsters. There's a scene in here where when he was a kid, 8 or 9 or 10 years old, his father would break his arm and make him fight to learn how to fight with one arm. And because Jackson is a supernatural being, he would heal from his broken arm in like a week. So his dad would break it again until he mastered that technique. And then his dad would break his other arm and then start on his legs, things like that. So Jackson has a different perspective on the world than most people do. He's like a forced incel, kind of, So, but but some things happened, estranged him from his father, and there are reasons for that come out in the end of the story, probably the third novel. So, these stories, I know they're not the best. I know that they are absolutely they're not really complete stories in and of themselves. They're good. I mean, I think they're okay. But the biggest thing is that they're background. They're setting up things that I can reference later. When I take say Jackson and Mac, his partner, into a situation, I have reference material now to go back and see how those people would act. And that will evolve over time as I learn about the character. But you understand that writing a story is kind of like discovering an alternate universe. In fact, if you hold to the omniverse theory, then it may be exactly what we're doing. So we're discovering these things as we go. We're not per se creating things out of thin air. We're using our experiences, our perceptions, our perspectives, every piece of media we've consumed. Our whole life experience is what allows us to discover these stories. I had a really interesting life when I was young. And in that life, when I was about 12 years old, my cousins who lived across the street from me, we lived in a very rural area. And we lived in a mobile home across the street from my grandparents. It was probably about 86. And we had to go about half a mile up the road and down another road to find our mailbox. And it was just a whole series of mailboxes. The whole neighborhood was in there. And we found a kid or a guy that was probably 18, 19 years old, just beating the crap out of all these mailboxes with a baseball bat, aluminum baseball bat. And they were beating up our mailboxes. So we threw rocks at him. We were kids. We threw rocks at him on our bikes, and we threw rocks at him until he went away. Well, later that evening, I didn't know anything about him. My cousins did, but the young man was mentally disabled and had a lot of issues. He'd been in state hospital several times. Well, I was standing, leaning up against the house. My parents did this whole thing on the weekend where them and my grandparents and everybody would sit out in the yard and drink beer and smoke and barbecue, that kind of thing. Did it every weekend. Well, my cousin grabbed my shoulder and says, "Jack, I think he's pointing a gun at you." And I look up, and sure enough, that guy we ran off from our mailboxes is holding. In retrospect, I think it was a 271 or 243 rifle, bolt action rifle, pointed right at me. At me. Not my parents, not my cousins, at me. So I, frightened to death, because my father taught me what guns do to things, calmly walked over to my dad and shook his shoulder and said, "Dad, there's a guy over there pointing a gun at me." And he looked up. Now, you got to consider, my dad's a redneck. He was in cut-off blue jean shorts, flip-flop sandals, and no shirt, drinking a beer and smoking a cigarette. This man jumps up and just takes off running after the guy. The guy tries to, I guess he fired and tried to reload and ended up dropping the gun and running. The whole neighborhood got involved. I mean, we had a posse, a literal posse. People got in the back of pickup trucks and roamed the neighborhood looking for this guy. And finally, the cops do show up. I guess my grandmother called them. I don't know. I was a kid. This is, unbelievable. So the cops start interviewing me, and I tell them the whole thing that I just told you, that he was throwing rocks, that kind of thing. And they're like, "Hey, if we take you to his house, can you identify him if he comes to the door?" And I'm like, he'll see me if I do that. Of course, I was a kid. I wasn't thinking. He already knows who I am. He already knows I'm going to call it. It's logical. So, there's roving bands of people ready to string a guy up for pointing a gun at a kid. Bunch of rednecks, So, so I get in the cop car and we roll over there, and the father opens the door and says his son hadn't been there in several days. And the other cop goes around the back and finds the kid trying to sneak out the back door. So they take me home. They arrest the kid. They take me home. Another cop goes. And I never heard anything else about it. I did some research later on, and I guess he ended up back in the institution, where I think he really did belong. I think he just needed a lot of help. He had I don't think his parents were the greatest people in the world, though I don't know them, so I can't say for sure. And I think he was abused quite a bit because he was mentally disabled. But that's all in retrospect. When I was a kid, I was scared to death. But things like that has happened to me over the course of my life, and it's things like that I've drawn on to write these stories. So that's what I'm trying to do. Now, I'm probably going to do a big live stream on or around Halloween. And in that live stream, we're going to I'm going to play each of the horror stories that I've written for this month, one at a time. When the chat wants us to pause it to discuss something, we will. When a panelist wants to pause it to discuss something, we will. But there should be I'm hoping to have 5 to 6 more stories up by then. So we probably won't get to everything, but I just thought, I'm writing an urban fantasy, which is, 3 parts horror, 1 part fantasy, set in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas. And it's October. It's All Hallows Eve month. So that's what I'm doing. I would really appreciate if you guys would comment when you do watch these stories. I know you will. And I was thinking that this was too early in the day to do a live stream anyway. So, and I don't ever do them, so nobody's expecting it. So if you guys would like, hit me up, DM me on Twitter. I'm you can hit me up at George Big Dick Lucas or at Sisk_II. Those are my 2 Twitter handles that I use. Or you can email me at info@StoryMan-Jack.com and let me know what you think. Contact me if you want to collaborate, you want to work on something, you want to do some live streams. I'm no longer married, so I have free time. Well, sort of. But I've got plenty of time to talk to you guys and to the community. So I think I'll end it here. Everybody's busy. It's Friday. They're out shopping. They're out having a good time. So it's hard to just discuss by yourself for hours upon hours when you don't have anybody questioning you to have that go on. So I hope you enjoy. Please like, share, and subscribe this as well as the story videos. Let me know what you think. And you guys have a blessed weekend. Good night. Yeah, I did, Kai. I did. All right. Good night, you guys. See you guys. Fat Steven Seagal has Mars leggings. Great. Awesome. Yeah, I do tend to ramble. It's the old saying that storytellers talk too much and writers can't shut up. So it's the way it is. So, but I'll probably do this a little bit later. I try really hard not to step on people's toes, and there's so many great members of the community, so much better than I am, doing live streams every night. I'm just gonna have to suck it up and do it one night. That's why I'm hoping to schedule a good, long, listening to these stories and discussion of these stories and writing in general on or around Halloween. I'll dress up like the clown, like the CNN, the Clowning News Network clown, and everything will be great. But I hope you guys have a great day and a blessed weekend.